I'm excited about today. Today's kind of two different sermons. You're like, oh, great. But they're two short sermons. And we're going to look at one part of the scripture for a little bit and then look at the next part. And then hopefully by the end, what we'll see is they're actually connected. It's two different sermons if we wanted to take two different sermons, but I think Matthew put them together specifically on purpose because they actually connect with each other. And then I think what might actually happen by the end, I hope, if God wants us to, is we're actually going to see how all this connects to Pentecost Sunday and what that looks like for us today. We're going to start in Matthew chapter 17. And if you don't have a Bible, there's a Pew Bible in front of you, and the page numbers will be on the screen. And that'd be awesome. But if you don't mind, as we read God's Word, if you'd stand, if you can. If you can't, not a big deal. But if you're able to stand as we read God's Word, just good to honor God's reading of God's Word together. I will start reading verse 22. When they came together in Galilee, he said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be delivered over to human hands. He will be killed, and on the third day he will be raised to life." And the disciples were filled with grief. After Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma temple tax came to Peter and asked, "Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax?" "Yes, he does," he replied. When Peter came into the house, Jesus was first to speak. "What do you think, Simon?" he asked. "From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own children or from others?" "From others," Peter answered. "Then the children are exempt," Jesus said to him. "But so that we may not cause offense, go to the lake and throw out your line. Take the fish you catch, the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours." This is an odd story. It's so strange. This is the word of God for the people of God, and you said, "Thanks be to God." You may be seated this morning. Odd story, and I think we're going to have a good time. Let's pray. God, this is a holy moment when we look into your word. It's a sacred thing. We don't take it lightly. So we just want to pause before we jump in, because we believe that you're going to speak to us, that it's going to be your words, not mine or anybody else's. And you remind me of that all the time. So Lord, take this foolishness of talking for 20, 30, 40 minutes and make it bigger than me. Because we need you, God, to make us more like you, to give us grace so that we can be the people you want us to be. So we all need you. And God, nobody needs you now more than I do. So God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing and acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So just to remind you about what's been happening, a couple Sundays ago we looked at the Transfiguration and how Jesus went up on the mountain with Peter, James, the three, the big three, and as they were up there, Jesus kind of became this light started coming out of him, and Moses was there, and Elijah was there, and Peter's like, "This is great. Let's just build 3 tabernacles. Let's build 3 tents, and let's just stay here. It's awesome." And then we learned the next week that that's cool, and sometimes those mountaintop experiences are fun, but there's a whole host of people in the valley that need to be ministered to, a whole host of people, and how they came down, and there was a boy there who had suffered from seizures, and it had even thrown him into the fire, and that Jesus heals the boy, and the disciples like, why couldn't we do that? And so we talked about how between Jesus telling them that he was going to die in the Transfiguration, there was about a week, 6 days, where they were going back and forth, and how in the Matthew 10, the disciples believed in Jesus and thought he was awesome and was undivided, but then Jesus tells them that what Messiah is and what this all looks like is we're going to the cross, and they didn't like that. So what happened is they couldn't heal the boy because now they were divided. Jesus had told them the whole plan, and they had their own idea. It was this division, this different thought of who Jesus was, and they needed to be reminded. One of the key things that God said on the Mountain of Transfiguration was listen to him. He's trying to tell you what this whole thing is about. Listen to him. And they came off the mountain and they started asking questions. Rather than tell Jesus what they thought he should do, they start to ask a whole lot of questions. Well, now they're back in Galilee. Now Galilee's kind of like ground zero. It's kind of like central for Jesus' ministry. All kinds of things happened in Galilee. And it's kind of interesting because it's like, well, maybe we're going back and things are going to be like they always were. You know, we're going back to ground zero. We're going back to the hub. We're going back to to where it all began. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we can just get back and get beyond all this crucifixion talk, get beyond what this looks like. And so Matthew specifically puts this here. Jesus has just healed a boy, and they're heading back to Galilee. And so in their minds, it's like, yes, let's do more of that. It's great. And so Matthew specifically and Jesus, when they get back to Galilee, wanted to remind the disciples what this whole thing was about, what this whole ministry, this whole life was about. And so in 22 and 23, he says, hey, the Son of Man's going to be handed over, and he's going to die. The Son of Man's going to be beaten. He's going to suffer. But don't worry, on the third day, he will be raised again. Now the disciples are like, yeah, but Jesus, you just touched that boy. Can't we just do that? Man, the healing business would be a good business to be in. Like, it would be popping. I mean, if we just start healing people, you see all the crowds, like 5,000 and one, just men plus women and children. So it's probably like 10,000, 15,000 people. Can you imagine that, church? 15,000. Jesus, that would be awesome. So let's just forget all that cross stuff and let's just bring about all this healing business, because people will fill the place. People will come from all over just to be a part of that. And Jesus reminds them, yeah, that's fun, I admit. But it's not who God sent me to be. It's not the redemption. It's not the way that all this is going to be made right. It's not through just touching people. But there's something deeper that the human person needs, and that's a healing from sin. And so it's just this pivotal moment where they're going back and they're like, oh, this is going to be great. The people of Galilee, they haven't heard this crucifixion talk yet. So they're just going to come and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be exciting. Let's just stick to that. And Jesus says, let's be reminded. Let's not forget what this is going to look like. Now this time, it doesn't say the disciples rebuke Jesus. It doesn't say that Peter stands up and says you're wrong. If you look at the last part of verse 23, and the disciples were filled with grief. They were filled with grief. Because God had just told them to listen, and so now they're filled with sorrow because they don't like it, but they know that that's what's going to happen. They're starting to come to terms. I don't know that they fully understand or they fully grapple, but they understand that when Jesus says, if you want to be my disciple, that it's not just Jesus going to the cross. If you want to be my disciple, you must deny yourself, and then you're going to pick up your cross, and we're going to do this together. Now, we love to glory in the cross. Nothing wrong with that. We love to sing songs about the cross. We love to learn about the cross and what Jesus did. And if Jesus wants to die for me, awesome, woo, that's great. But when he looks at me, he says, no, I want you to be a part of this too. It's a totally different story. All of a sudden, the game changes, that it's not just Jesus going and we can celebrate what he did, but then I realize that he's looking at me and saying, man, if I'm going to be like him, then I must go there as well. It's time to stop analyzing the cross. Nothing wrong with looking at the cross and analyzing it, but it's time to stop analyzing it, and it's time to embrace it. It's time to stop this just trying to figure it out and just saying, you know what, I'm never going to understand why God would leave a perfect place and come down. Like I can try, and it's good to have those conversations, but at some point we have to end the conversation and say, you know what, I'm just going to embrace it. I'm just going to go and follow Jesus wherever he leads me. I will follow all the way. So there's got to come a point in our lives where we can argue and we quit, and we say, you know what, this may not be the easiest path ahead. This may not be the way I would draw it up, but I'm going to embrace the cross in my own life, and then I'm going to allow that grace, as we talked about, to flow into me, but then out of me. And I'm no longer going to just be so upset, but I'm going to start to understand. And as opposed to saying, well, Jesus, it'd be better to go this way. It'd be better to do the healing thing. It'd be better to get the biggest band. It'd be great to get bigger screens. It'd be great to and trying to rally people around a program. And at some point, we just have to say, I'm just going to live this life and be who God's called me to be. And my difference, once again, in my life is not going to be I go to the biggest and the best, and we have the best programs. My life is going to be about the cross of Jesus Christ that transforms me and shapes me and calls me to be like him. And that I believe that if that's the way Jesus lived and that's the way he thought and what was going to change the world, that maybe in my own life that would be different enough, that God might use that in my own life. The cross means very little to us unless we have this stubborn commitment that I'm going to do it no matter what. And if pain comes up in the world and something happens, I'm going to live and be a part of the plan that God had laid out from the beginning. So once they acted by argument, the disciples were like, no way. Hey, Jesus, let's do the miracles. That'd be a logical way people would come, and then we could talk about the cross in the back room. You know what I'm saying? Like we do Sunday mornings, and then we'd bring them to the side rooms. Like, well, really, this is about a cross, but we do this big thing, and Jesus is like, no, this is what it's going to be. And here's what's so cool about that. Here's what's so neat about this whole idea. Is what happens in our lives when we start to interact with the pain of the world. What happens in our life when we start to interact with the suffering of the world is at that moment that Jesus living in and through me, and it intersects with those in the world, a cross is erected and bleeding starts to happen. Listen, I'm not going to stand up here and sugarcoat it. Like when you journey with people, it is hard. There are times when you're journeying with somebody and they're going through a hard time and they're not sleeping at night. And guess what? Because they're going through a hard time and you're journeying with them, you're not sleeping at night either. But I promise you that it's the way that God has chosen for us to reach out to the world. Or maybe you've been there and you have a family member or a friend or somebody down the street that you know just isn't living the way that God wants them to. And they're just making stupid decisions. And it keeps you up at night. Because where Jesus is and his life flowing through you, where it intersects with the hurts and the pains and the troubles of the world, a cross is resurrected. And as that cross is resurrected, redemption can happen. It can happen. But it only happens as we journey and allow God's love and spirit to flow through us. And we start to erect these crosses all around the people that we come in contact with. And we say, you know what, I don't have a whole lot to give you, but I'm going to give you whatever God gives me to pour into you and to invest in you and to love you and to understand. And when crosses start to be made, that's where redemption and reconciliation, that's where it happens at the cross. Not on the mountaintop. That's where it happens, is when we get to that point in our own lives. And so sometimes we just got to be stubborn and we say, man, the rest of the world is living this way. I'm going to be so stubborn that I'm going to live this way in the midst of how they're living and what that looks like. Men and women will not be won by Hollywood stunts and big programs. They will be won by people like you. We could get pyrotechnics in here. That'd be awesome. You know what I'm saying? Like blow a few things up, and all the rednecks in the room would think that'd be great too. You know, and it'd be cool. I'm not sure it'd win a whole lot of people over. They'd come for that Sunday. Hey, come next Sunday. We're gonna blow stuff up. But when we don't blow stuff up the next Sunday, they're gonna come back. What should attract them to us is that we're people of the cross, and they have connection with people who are trying to be who Jesus Christ wants them to be. Hollywood stunts, big programs aren't going to save them. People like you. That's what's going to speak and reach out to people each and every day. It happens when we embrace the cross, and then we become a part and the pain of what that looks like, and then we allow ourselves to be invested in the pain and the suffering of our next door neighbor. And when we embrace that, and blood is shed and blood flows like it did from the cross and not literal but like our lives and we get involved and we journey through them through hard times, people will understand who Jesus really is. That's what I want. It's about connection. It's not about what happens on this platform. It's about you, us, connecting with people and journeying with them. Let's not miss that. Let's not get excited about, yeah, we had a cool drum this morning. And that was awesome. I think that was so cool. But if we're depending on a drum, our hope is in something that's material. I believe this with all my heart. I believe with all my heart. We could sing, and some of you would like this, bluegrass music every Sunday. And if we're connecting with people, they'll come. We think they care about what we're doing in here. They're not connected. So we got to get this picture and get this mind that we got to embrace the cross and then go out. 2,000 years ago, Jesus had his own body. Now he wants yours. 2,000 years ago, he had his own face. Now he wants yours. He had his own hands. Now he wants yours. possesses our body, what will he do with it? Here's the bad news, but maybe it's good news. If he possesses our body, he'll do the same thing that he did with his own. It's you dying to self. It's you not being selfish. It's being selfless and allowing God to use and shape and mold and make you. The question is, are we available? Are we available? Sermon number 1. 10 minutes, not bad. Now let's talk about the tax and the fish. The tax and the fish. Oh man, this is so much fun. So the tax, let's talk about the temple tax. The guy comes up to Peter, does your master pay the temple tax? Yeah, sure. And it was funny, some guys that I read this week were like, Peter maybe really didn't know if Jesus did or not, but it's like, yeah, sure he does. And then Jesus must have known. And so the temple tax, what the temple tax was, it was usually understood as a tax to be levied on every Jewish male at the year, starting at year 19 of their life. So when they turned 19 years old, they started paying the Jewish temple tax. And they always paid the temple tax the month before the Passover. And you say, why that? Because the Passover, when a lot of people came to the temple and they needed a little extra money to get through the Passover and offering sin and what that looked like. And so it was when a Jewish male turned 19, it was just the males, it was agreed that they would pay the temple tax. Now, this comes from Nehemiah. So if you have your Bibles, turn to the book of Nehemiah chapter 10. Nehemiah chapter 10. So this is scriptural. It actually comes from Scripture. Nehemiah chapter 10, we'll start reading at verse 32. 32. So the book of Nehemiah is people rebuild the city walls and rebuild the city. It's been destroyed, and God tells Nehemiah, go back and rebuild your city and the city walls. And so chapter 10, verse 32, we assume this is the people, the responsibility for carrying out the commands to give 1/3 of a shekel each year to the service of the house of our God. For the bread set on the table, for the regular grain offerings and burnt offerings, for the offerings on the Sabbaths, at the new moon feasts, and at the appointed festivals, for the holy offering for sins, offerings to make atonement for Israel, and for all the duties of the house of God. And so the people said, we will give 1/3 of a shekel, 1/3 of a shekel. So that's actually less than what is talked about in our text. And the amount was raised later. Love raising taxes, you know what I'm saying? That's a joke. And the amount raised later was raised to 1/2 a shekel. And you're like, why was it to 1/2 a shekel? Well, let's turn back to Exodus chapter 30. Exodus chapter 30. This is Moses speaking to the people. And in Exodus 30, it's called atonement money, is the title of this section. So we're going to start reading at verse 11. Then the Lord said to Moses, when you take a census of the Israelites to count them, each one must pay the Lord a ransom for his life at the time of he is counted. Then no plague will come on them when you number them. Each one who crosses over to those already counted is to give 1/2 a shekel, according to the sanctuary shekel, which weighed 20 gerahs. This 1/2 shekel is an offering to the Lord. All who cross over those 20 years old, so this one says 20 years old or more, are to give an offering to the Lord. The rich are not to give more than 1/2 shekel, and the poor are not to give less when you make the offering to the Lord to atone for your lives. Receive the atonement money from the Israelites and use it for the service of the tent of meeting. It will be a memorial for the Israelites before the Lord, making atonement for your lives. And so this takes on even more significance, that you're giving this money, you're giving this temple tax so that you can have atonement for your sins. Interesting. Very interesting. But this is where 1/2 a shekel, and so it was raised. Now, 1/2 a shekel was 2 days' wages for a day laborer. So somebody that just worked in the field or worked, it was 2 days' wages, an entire 2 days' wages was the temple tax. And once again, the tax was collected the month before Passover, because during Passover it was the busiest time for the temple. And they needed to be able to get through that with all the sacrifices that they need for the people, as well as be able to sustain afterwards. Now, even outside the land of Israel, this obligation was taken seriously. So it wasn't just for people who lived in Israel. We're going to get somewhere, but I just got to give you some background because I think it just speaks so much to what this text is trying to tell us. And so a guy named Philo claims that the donors bring them cheerfully and gladly, expecting that payment will give them, listen to this, expecting that payment will give them release from slavery or healing of diseases and the enjoyment of liberty fully secured, and also complete preservation from danger. I'll give God this, and he's got to protect me and keep me safe and all the other stuff. Sounds like some pastors today. Likewise, the Jews of Babylonian organized a system for collecting. So even when the people were spread, it was collected. And after the temple was destroyed, so why should we keep giving a tax? The Romans in AD 70 jumped on, is like, we'll take that money. And they had a temple to Jupiter, and the god Jupiter in Rome, and so they used that money to pay and support that temple. Now, why would they ask Jesus if Jesus paid the temple tax or not? And why does Jesus respond the way he does? I hope that's already filtering through your mind as we've been looking at Scripture. And because, it's so different today. But back then, they had different ideas about things. And we've talked about this before. But in pre-70 Judaism, before the temple was destroyed, it was assumed that you would pay the 2 drachma. I probably should have learned how to say that. Temple tax precisely. And strangely, it was just different. So the Sadducees argued that the annual payment of the tax should be voluntary. You should pay it if you want to. You don't have to. It's just a suggestion. And so if you want to give it, that's great. But you know what? If you don't, not a big deal. And then there was this other group, the Jewish and people that kind of went with the Qumran, which were a lot of the Essenes, and that's a Q, the Essenes. They were actually against it, because they've segregated themselves, and we don't think you should do it. Some of the Qumran believed it was like once in a lifetime. You just pay it once. One time, you're done. You don't have to pay it anymore. The Pharisees loved the temple tax, because where did they work? In the temple. They loved it. They thought it was great, and that you should pay it every year. And so why are they asking Jesus if Jesus pays the temple tax? Because they want to know where he fits. Are you a Pharisee? Are you a Sadducee? So they're trying to pin him down and say, because his answer will be huge. Where do you fit? Jesus, where do you fit? Now, this Jesus normally does, he takes their question and just turns it upside down on their head and just makes them probably go crazy. And so he asks Peter, hey, Peter, who pays the taxes in the land? Do the king's kids pay it? Or do the subjects in the land pay it? And Peter's like, well, the king doesn't tax his kids, just the subjects. And this is where the story turns upside down. He's like, oh, that's cool. So you're telling me this tax is a tax for God, who we would view as king. We are his children. We are his sons and daughters. So we're exempt. Because the king doesn't tax his kids. If God is the king, the creator of the universe, we are his children, then we're exempt. We're exempt. Woo! And then he says, but let's not be an offense to somebody else. Let's not offend them on some level. Now, next week you need to come back. We're going to look at this passage, and we're going to talk about how do we offend others and how do we live in the midst of that hardship of, do we do it or do we not do it? It's okay for me to do it, but should I do it? And offending others. So we're not going to get into that. But Jesus says, let's just give because we can. I understand that if I don't give, one of these groups is going to be mad. And so it's not time for me to make everybody upset just yet. So let's give the tax. Go find a fish or go fishing. The first fish you catch, there's going to be enough tax money for you and for me, and go give it to the priest. Now, I was trying. I was like, what is that all about? And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But I want to talk about giving for just a moment. Money, because that's what we love to talk about. What if we saw that we live for a different world? What if we saw that we live for a different kingdom? And in that kingdom, in that world that we live, the kingdom of God, we realize that God doesn't require us to pay anything. We're free. We're his kids. There's a freedom in that. And so as we're giving, it's not that God looks down and says, you've got to do this or you're not my son or daughter. But what if it was reversed? What if it was this understanding that because I'm free, because I'm a son or daughter of God, that my giving it's not like I'm giving out of obligation. I'm giving because God has given everything to me. Everything I have is a gift from God. And so I give, not because it's an obligation and not because I have to. I give, I tithe, I put money in the offering plate, not because I feel like God's going to smite me if I don't. I give because He's blessed me so much. He's given me everything that I have. Why would I not want to give back to Him? Why would I not want to return some of the portion that He's given to me to give to Him? If people had that understanding, we wouldn't be in a financial debt anytime, anywhere. Because I'm not giving out of a duty or obligation. I'm giving because I've just been blessed by so much. Why wouldn't I want to give back? Why wouldn't I want to be a part of what God's doing here in Paulding, Ohio? Don't put money in the offering plate because you're like, well, I checked something off my list. Kind of like the Israelites. Well, man, God's going to protect me. God's going to do this, and this. It's not if you give that your life's going to be cake. If you're giving for that reason, you're giving for the wrong reason. If you're giving for the reason so that you think you check a mark off and now I can be a member of this church, you're giving for the wrong reason. If you're giving because God has so blessed you with what you have and you say, yeah, but that person has more than me, but it's probably enough. If God has blessed you with what you've been able to earn and receive, and you say, God, I am so blessed, and I view my life as just a gift, a blessing from you. If I have that understanding, then giving is a whole lot easier. It's a whole lot easier. Because it's not based upon this, he's the king, and he's a tyrant, and he's demanding that I do this. Yeah, he's loved me. He's given me the ability to have what I have. And like, does God really want my $2.50 if that's what my 10% is? You know what? He'll be fine, but you won't. Because you got to be open to what God is doing, and you got to understand that everything is a gift. And when we start to hold on to things too tightly, it becomes about what I have and what I can do rather than what He's blessed me with. And so the fish in the sea, the fishing, I think it's a parable. I think it's a picture of God saying, God has brought things through your path and blessed you. A silly fish in the sea, go fish and get the money, is a parable of saying money comes to you through a lot of different ways, but it's all a gift. The money in the fish's mouth is a gift from God. Take it and go give it. Now Peter could have been like, I'm going to go fish again. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is pretty lucrative, and this is pretty good. And but if you view it through the eyes that God has brought what you have through your path, and like I said, we all could want more. And then just looking at how do we make this work and fit. But I never want to get to the point where I look at everything that I have and think this is what I've done, rather than say this is what God has blessed me with. How can I be a good steward of that? If we all responded to God that way, we're going to be all right. I just believe that with everything that we're going to be okay. So it's this selfless, it's this understanding of getting beyond that. So all these gifts, our money, our time, everything is a gift. Everything I have is from God. It's all good. And God, I just bless you because you blessed me, and I want to give back. Some of us maybe say, well, I can't give 10%. And you say, well, maybe you just need to start with 2. Some of you, it's easy to give 10%. And you need to give a little more. Okay. He's blessed us. And if we give out of that, it's totally different. There's a deeper level, I think, that Jesus is talking about this temple tax and what that looks like. And I think that this is where we're going to land today. And I think this is how the whole cross thing, where this text is, and Pentecost all relates together. So the temple tax in Exodus we read was thought to be the atonement tax, and it was a reminder that you need to give to the temple because the temple provides you a goat or a lamb or a dove or a grain offering or whatever. They provide you that, and so you need to give so that you can then go and make atonement for your sin. You can then go and the priest can slaughter the animal, the priest can do whatever it is he does so that your sin can be atoned for. So what about this? Jesus is saying, hey, God's the king. We are his children. And this whole idea of me going to the cross and suffering is providing a way that now through the cross, you don't have to make sacrifice in the temple anymore. Oh man, I thought you'd get a little excited about that. He's providing a way of saying you're not going to have to pay this tax because now there's going to be a direct correlation between you and God because of what I'm going to do on the cross. The debt's going to be paid. The sacrifice will not need to be anymore because I'm going to make the ultimate sacrifice. And so, yeah, let's go pay the temple. But one day you're not going to have to pay the temple tax anymore because you're not going to need that system. I'm going to step in the midst of it and create a way for you to have oneness with God that has nothing to do with slaughtering any more animals and making atonement and making sacrifice. So the temple tax will go away because I'm going to be the ultimate sacrifice for your sin. You're going to be ultimate sons and daughters of the Most High. The people burst out of that upper room and they come before them and they say, hey, that Jesus that you killed, the Jesus that you put in the grave and thought that you had destroyed, guess what? On the third day, he rose again from the dead. And he wants you to be his sons and daughters. And now because of what Jesus did on the cross, there's a way for us to have direct connection with God. There's a way for us to have intimacy with God. There's a way for us to have a relationship so that God's love can come in and through us and spread out to everybody else. It says in Acts chapter 2, we were going to look at it, we don't have time. It says in Acts chapter 2 that the people came and it said they were cut to their core. Like the people were speaking and it was like, this is great news. Good news for us. They were cut to the core and they looked at the disciples and said, what do we need to do? You just need to repent and follow after him. That's it. And that whole temple tax thing, you don't have to worry about it because we're sons and daughters of the Most High God. That whole temple tax thing, it's a thing of the past because Jesus made the ultimate sacrifice for our sins. And you can give back to him by giving to others. You can give back to him because he's giving us the very thing that causes us to have life. Hey guys, I'm going to die. I'm going to suffer, but there's a reason for it. Hey, does your master pay the temple tax? Sure he does. Hey, Peter, let's talk about that. Let's go pay the tax now, but one day, you're not going to have to pay the temple tax anymore because I will be the ultimate sacrifice for all of you. But go fish and realize that everything you have is a gift. It just comes in and out, and don't hold on to it too tightly because it may be here today and gone tomorrow, but realize that your hope and your love and your grace is dependent upon me and what I'm going to do on the cross rather than on things and money and stuff. And so I'm going to bless you. And I may bless others of you differently than I bless this person. But you all need to have this giving heart because I'm going to give you the ultimate, my life and my death. So do we need to pay the temple tax? Now you're sons and daughters. Whew. Yes. The king doesn't tax their children. But you can have a freedom. So no, God doesn't look at you and think, man, if that person would just give more, I surely would bless them more. He doesn't. But he looks at each one of us and says, man, I want to bless them. Only so that they will then be a blessing to everybody they come in contact with. So this passage it's about the temple tax, but it's actually about the cross. This passage is about the temple tax, but it's actually about Pentecost. This passage is about fish in the sea, but it's actually about how do we view our lives, because how we view our lives and in relation to who God is causes us to live differently in the world today. God wants to intersect our lives with the hurts and the pains of all the people around us so that crosses can be erected and redemption and reconciliation can happen, not just at 210 Dooley Drive, but on every street and in every field and in every school and in every church and in every house around this county and around the world, because there's no longer a divide that separates us from God. It's good news. That is good news. Let's pray. Hey, will you stand and receive this blessing? I'm excited. Woo! I could stay here all day and talk about this, but we got graduation and barbecues and all that other stuff to get to. I hope you're excited, church. Listen, it's not going to happen because I'm here. It's because we're all here together. And I'm just excited about what God might do. Man, Pentecost. Let's do some more of that. Receive this blessing. May you, Paulding, Nazarene, go this week, and may you live in the power of the Spirit. And may you realize this week that you are sons and daughters of the Most High God. And that what that calls you to is to live a life the way that God lived the life, that He wants to use your body the way that He used His, to be broken and poured out for the entire world. And that when we intersect the world, crosses are erected. And that's where true redemption, true reconciliation, true love comes from. And that what makes us different than the world, maybe that's the theme, is grace that flows in us and out of us. Let's go be grace to our world this week. Grace and peace be with you.